What is the problem with gay marriage in your mind?
It doesn't exist. Who gives the right to marry people, the church or the government?
It depends on where you are,
God is the one that marries people, and it's never been between a man, two men or two women. It's always been one man and one woman since the beginning of time. That's how you got here.
What's up, everybody? Major Retired Richard Ojeda here. And if Jesus came back today, do you think MAGA would even let him in our country? These so-called Christians love to preach about Jesus. But if he showed up today, speaking out against oppression, telling the rich to help the poor, flipping the tables of the greedy, do you think they'd be cheering him on? No chance. They'd be calling Border Patrol, asking for his immigration status, and demanding that he learn English before stepping foot in our country. And if you want to see this mindset in action, look no further than the good liars. These guys walk right up to Trump supporters, ask them simple questions, and just let them talk.
And so why does gay marriage affect your life?
It affects everyone's life. If you start telling these they can get married, next you'll start saying they can have babies. We already have that in America.
And how does that affect your life?
It affects everyone's life because now you're usurping God's authority by saying the state or the government replaces God.
And how does that affect your life?
I just told you. I love my neighbor as I love myself.
Okay. Does that include gay neighbors?
No.
First of all, Trump didn't even campaign on banning gay marriage. So why is this guy acting like this win was some kind of moral victory for the cause? He was out there because Trump made it acceptable for people like him to crawl out from under the rocks and start openly attacking LGBTQ rights again. But here's where it gets hilarious. When asked why gay marriage is a problem, what does he say? It doesn't exist. Okay, so he's holding a sign calling for the end of something that according to him doesn't even exist. That right there is peak MAGA logic.
Who gives the right to marry people, the church or the government?
It depends on where you are,
God is the one that marries people, and it's never been between a man, two men or two women. It's always been one man and one woman.
Well, hold up. If only God can marry people, then why do straight couples need a marriage license? Why does the government have a say in divorce? Either God is in charge or the government is. But these people always want to have it both ways. That's the foundation of all MAGA logic. Scream about small government while demanding it control every aspect of people's private lives. But wait, it gets better. He gets asked how gay marriage affects his life. And this is where it goes off the rails.
And so why does gay marriage affect your life?
It affects everyone's life. If you start telling these they can get married, next you'll start saying they can have babies. We already have that in America.
And how does that affect your life?
It affects everyone's life because now you're usurping God's authority by saying the state or the government replaces God.
And how does that affect your life?
I just told you. I love my neighbor as I love myself.
Okay. Does that include gay neighbors?
No.
Same-sex couples already have kids. It's called adoption, surrogacy, IVF. This is not new. But in his head, the mere existence of LGBTQ plus families is some kind of direct attack on his fragile little worldview. This is the kind of ignorance we're dealing with. This is a level of stupidity that's been emboldened by Trump's presidency. These people don't care about Jesus. They don't care about faith. They don't care about morality. They care about using Christianity as a weapon to justify their own prejudices. It's never been about faith. It's been about control. And that brings us to Idaho, where Republicans are actively trying to roll back same-sex marriage.
So we've been into this decision of Obergefell for about 10 years now. The 4-5 decision, the 4 dissenting decisions, they argued that the Supreme Court had exceeded its constitutional authority, it's undermined state sovereignty, and it disrupted the democratic process. The same process that we use to make decisions on wolf hunting in our state or marijuana, those kinds of decisions, they're not defined in the Constitution. The federal government has no authority over those kinds of decisions. So while the justices, they didn't agree on every point in this dissension, they all agreed on one thing, that the Constitution did not guarantee a right to same-sex marriage, and that's what this case was about.
They'll tell you that it's states' rights, but don't let them fool you. Their resolution doesn't just say states should decide. It calls for the Supreme Court to impose a nationwide ban on same-sex marriage.
What this resolution does is it rejects the Obergefell decision. It just says we don't recognize unconstitutional decisions by courts. We're calling for a reversal of the Supreme Court decision and asking them, a reversal, what that would look like is asking them to revisit the case. And it sounds like there's going to be some cases coming up, actually one from Idaho that might actually be that case. And then we're asking them to restore state authority. This is a state's rights. If the Supreme Court can start creating all kinds of new rights that they want to use to push down onto states, you can see this could end badly for Idaho.
This is not about state rights, actually. If you look very closely at this memorial, around lines 10 to 12 on page 2, it actually calls for the Supreme Court to declare that from coast to coast, essentially, that union is between a man and a woman. So this really is not about deferring it to state rights. It's about coming up with a new judicially declared mandate in the opposite direction and saying, oh, the Supreme Court is going to define marriage. This memorial just asked them to define it as the opposite of the way they've defined it now. So this is very much about judicial overreach and not about states' rights.
So let's get this straight. When the Supreme Court ruled in favor of gay marriage, they were overreaching. But if they ruled to ban it, that's fine. It's not about states' rights. It's about them wanting to impose their religious views on the entire country. And their justification for overturning marriage equality? The Constitution doesn't explicitly say anything about same-sex marriage. So, well, guess what? It doesn't explicitly mention interracial marriage either. But here we are. You think these same people wouldn't overturn Loving versus Virginia if given the chance? Because let's be real. If Obergefell falls, that's next. And it's not just marriage equality. The far right is pushing a full-blown war on LGBTQ plus rights. That's what Project 2025 is about. They want a Republican president to wipe away protections, give businesses the right to discriminate, and basically erase LGBTQ plus visibility from public life. We've already seen it happening. Florida banning discussions of LGBTQ plus topics in schools, Texas pushing to eliminate legal protections, states banning gender-affirming care even for adults. This isn't hypothetical. This is happening right now. And here's the final gut punch. If Jesus came back today, these MAGA lunatics would not let him in. Someone went out and asked Trump supporters straight up, would you let Jesus into the country? And their response, as long as he came here legally. Think about that. Jesus, a brown-skinned Middle Eastern man, preaching about love, helping the poor, rejecting greed. He wouldn't even get past the border under these people's immigration policies. And they still wouldn't get it. They'd be the ones cheering for Rome to crucify him. This is what we're dealing with. These people have convinced themselves that they're on the side of good when they're doing the exact opposite of what their own religion teaches. They claim to be about Christian values while pushing hate, discrimination, and greed. They talk about morality while rallying behind a man who's cheated on all of his wives, bragged about sexual assault, and built his entire life on fraud and self-interest. They warned about the Antichrist for decades and then voted for him when he showed up on the ballot. This is the movement trying to legislate morality. These are people trying to dictate who gets to have rights and who doesn't. They aren't protecting America. They aren't protecting families. They're just scared of a world where they don't get to make the rules anymore. And the second that they start losing their own rights, you'll see how fast their so-called morals disappear. Because that's what happens when you build your entire belief system on hypocrisy. And that is an absolute fact. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.